We have load shedding every day, and South Africa is short on electricity generation. And so this whole scenario around nuclear energy coming to South Africa is very top of mind. And people are very concerned about the cost of money of implementing something like 7 nuclear reactors. Some people put the money at 1 trillion rand. We are joined today by Professor Steve Thomas from the University of Greenwich. He's an expert in energy policy. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
So just a first question, how much will nuclear cost South Africa?
That's a very difficult question to answer because South Africa has said it wants only the latest generation of nuclear power plants, and none of that generation is actually in operation yet. So we have some estimated costs, but the history of nuclear power is that estimated costs are not a reliable indicator of final costs. But the evidence from places like Britain, which is more advanced in the process, is that it's going to cost somewhere in the region of $8,000 per kilowatt. And if you turn that into rand, that's probably in the region of about 160 million rand per reactor.
And what does that mean for, say, a basic consumer consuming electricity?
Well, again, the cost of the reactor is clearly important, but at least as important is how much you have to pay to borrow the money. And that is entirely specific to the location, the commercial arrangements for the reactor. So, for example, in Britain, borrowing the money should be relatively cheap because the government is guaranteeing all the loans. So in other words, banks are effectively lending to the government, and the British government is probably not going to go out of business. There is a contract to buy all the power from the plant at a fixed, predictable price for 35 years. So there is very little commercial risk in the British case. What the case will be for South Africa, we don't know, but the big issue, I think, will be how is South Africa going to borrow the money?
Especially with Eskom having it's near junk status, so the borrowing level there isn't very good. Now I know Eskom are trying everything to improve that borrowing ability. So I mean, are they going to try and get one of the vendors to help actually fund the whole process?
Well, even the South African government's credit rating is not so great. I think it's something like BB, whereas the British government is AAA. So I think the only realistic way to finance nuclear power in South Africa is to get the vendor's government to come up with the money.
Now, your expertise in energy policy, when you look at the South African situation, do you think that the government's going down the right path here, and why do you think it's going down this path?
I think the government seems reluctant to learn from its own experience. It followed the pebble bed for 10 years, found that wasn't going to work. Then it opened up an international tender. It got bids in which were more than double what it expected, and it found it couldn't finance them. Now this time round, it's expecting prices to be much lower than the bids that they got in 2008. All the evidence suggests costs have gone up since then. In 2008, they wanted to build 2 reactors. Now they want to build 6. So if you couldn't finance the plants in 2008, why do you think 7 years later it's going to work this time?
So how will a country like South Africa choose the right technology in terms of what type of nuclear energy they want to come to South Africa?
Well, again, it's very difficult to choose technologies because there is no experience with this latest generation of reactors actually in operation. There are probably about 4 candidate technologies. 3 of those are actually under construction in the world, and the experience with them is frankly not very good. 16 out of 18 of them are more than 2 years late. So, you know, if you're looking for a proven technology, there isn't one out there. With a normal technology, you would perhaps have a call for tender, you would specify what you wanted out of the plant, you would get a price bid, and you would hold the vendor to that price. And if the plant didn't work well, then you would demand some sort of compensation. That doesn't work with nuclear power. You can't get a fixed cost. You can't get performance guarantees. So all you can fall back on is experience with existing plants. And as I said, there isn't any yet.
There seems to be a huge hype around nuclear energy. Is it countries like Russia and South Korea and France and the US? Is it a very strong foreign policy of theirs to use nuclear energy as a foreign policy strategy?
It does seem that these governments are seeing nuclear power as a major export opportunity. And realistically, without the support of your home government, a vendor is not going to get anywhere, because, as I say, they need the support of that government for finance, for training, for bilateral deals. It's company-only deals are a thing of the past for nuclear. So if your government is not behind you, you can forget selling nuclear reactors.
So now they've signed memorandums of understanding with Russia, but not the other vendor countries. What does that mean? I think I've read somewhere where you said they will sign agreements with the other countries. What does that all imply?
I think they have signed agreements with a couple of the other countries. I think if you look at the wording, it's not clear whether the Russian memorandum is more firm than the others. The wording is somewhat different, but it's difficult to tell that. I mean, memorandum of intergovernmental agreements in nuclear power are 10 a penny, frankly. They may be a necessary condition, but the number that actually lead to firm orders is very small. They really don't mean very much.
So on September the 2nd, in Parliament in South Africa, there's going to be a bit more clarity on the nuclear vendor situation. So we'll be keeping up to date on that. But thank you very much for your time and your insights, and I hope to speak to you again further.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.